our mission is really to serve the game of baseball, and that includes everybody that's involved with it. So obviously we're involved on the umpiring side, and people link obviously the name United Umpires mostly to the actual umpire. But I mean, we serve a number of people, tournament providers, we service colleges, we serviced high schools and rec leagues in the past. So all of those people, we have a joint effort to try to promote baseball and create a place for people to compete and be a part of that competition in a way. One of the biggest parts of that I miss is, going away for the weekend and hanging out with the crew and working the games and all that kind of stuff. And probably the best part of that was, hanging out with the crew. And I still get to do that. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, sometimes I think there's some people out there who have always said kind of the games get in the way sometimes of the camaraderie. And there's definitely some truth to that. But it's great to still be out there and try to help. Let me start by saying this for those who are listening that may not know this. Baseball, I believe, is the only sport where we do it a little bit backwards. So you attend a professional umpire school, and this has changed a little bit in the last couple of years, but essentially you attend a professional umpire school, pursue a professional career, and then I'll say fall out to college baseball, to high school baseball, to other things. Whereas, your other major sports, you work your way up. So you may, yeah. So, the NFL is hiring out of college football. The NHL is probably hiring out of juniors or whatever that might be. And, basketball kind of in the same way. Whereas in baseball, we're taking umpires into the 1-day clinics now and then into the 5 weeks at Vero.
And now, season 2, episode 31, letter Y. Without fail. Join hosts Dana Pappas with Alex Scandalis. And you're not there.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas, holding on the fort. Nate Acosta will be back with us next time. On this episode, we are covering the letter Y, and we are talking about the year-round nature of officiating with a guest who certainly works tirelessly for the umpires he serves 365 days a year. Our guest on this episode is Alex Scandalis. Alex has served as the Chief Executive Officer of United Umpires since August of 2017. In addition, he is currently the conference coordinator for numerous Division III NCAA conferences and NJCAA conferences. He serves on the CCA Baseball Umpires Manual Committee and serves as the instant replay coordinator for the D3 National Championship. So there's that 365 days a year. If there's more days in the year, I think he's using those as well. Alex, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dana. It's great to be here.
So before we get started on the topic of the day, can you tell us about your officiating journey, how you got started, the steps along the way, any other sports you officiate other than baseball, and where are you in officiating today?
Sure. Well, it's great to be here. I love to share my story and talk a little bit about culture and where we've come from and where we're going. So I guess for me, and I don't love to talk about myself, but just real briefly, I started umpiring when I was 13, 14 years old. A little bit of side money. I didn't want to mow lawns, didn't want to sell lemonade. So umpired a little bit, played baseball through about 12 years old. I was also a tennis player, and kind of umpiring fed my baseball needs. And then I played tennis through high school. So I kind of did both and had the ability to make some money and also, engage in a sport there through high school. So, and as that went on over time, I guess part of my journey and my progress was in the fact that I started assigning umpires at a pretty young age. And that's really how, the genesis of United Umpires and kind of everything that's come before it started. So I was umpiring a ton of the baseball games in the town next to mine. And one day, one of the adults said, "Hey, you do 75% of the games yourself. Can you just figure out who's going to do the other 25%? And, we can give you, a couple $100 extra or whatever." So that's how it started. And it was this town, and then the town 2 miles away, and the town 4 miles away, and then the town 10 miles away. And, by the time I went off to college, we were probably looking at 6 or 7 or 8 towns, something like that. I was continuing to umpire myself, and went off to college, umpired in Boston where I went to college, continued to progress all while running the business, coordinating some umpires. Got into college umpiring at a pretty early age after going to professional school and getting into college baseball at 21, 22 years old on the junior college scene, Division III scene. Again, all while still running umpires in the New Jersey area. Wound up back in New Jersey after college and continued to umpire. And at some point, started doing some high school assigning in New Jersey and just continued to progress and continue to take advantage of opportunities, continue to serve umpires, started some education with umpires in terms of utilizing some of the professional umpires during their off season, some of the college umpires in the area to try to educate new umpires, umpires trying to go up on their path. And it just kept going. And every opportunity, we just tried to take advantage and put our best foot forward. And, today, probably 30 years after I started, or pretty darn close, we have United Umpires with 3 different companies underneath it, assigning umpires nationwide from, 8-year-old baseball to Division I college under, some of our umbrella here. So it's a really rewarding journey. I get to do what I love every single day. And, it's something that I want to continue to share. And, it's opportunities like this to tell the story and get people interested and involved, not only on the actual umpiring side, but on the logistics and the coordinating side too. So it's a cool story for people to hear.
That really is, and we're gonna kinda stay there with United Umpires. So you're the CEO of that, and you mentioned you've got 3 kind of companies underneath that. Can you tell us, like, exactly what's the mission, who all you serve? You mentioned it a little bit, but if you could do a little more deep dive about United Umpires, that'd be great.
Sure. I mean, I think our mission is really to serve the game of baseball, and that includes everybody that's involved with it. So obviously, we're involved on the umpiring side, and people link obviously the name United Umpires mostly to the actual umpire. But I mean, we serve a number of people, tournament providers. We service colleges. We serviced high schools and rec leagues in the past. So all of those people, we have a joint effort to try to promote baseball and create a place for people to compete and be a part of that competition in a way. And at times, have to officiate and create situations and deal with situations that are tough. So, but always in the mind of, hey, we're trying to make the game better for everyone. And that's something that we've looked at and tried to instill in our culture for many, many years. And it's kind of all come together. So just as we talk about United Umpires as a whole, really we have 3 arms, and the first one being the collegiate arm, which I guess would be based mostly in the Northeast at this point. And we have several coordinators underneath that umbrella, going from junior college all the way through Division I. We have a national network of baseball complexes that we service the umpires for under the United Travel Umpires brand. We really specialize there in working at large scale complexes and trying to bring culture to those facilities through the officiating. So imagine being an umpire and you go to a high school game and there's 2 umpires, 1 field, 2 teams. You officiate the game. You have some camaraderie, but you go home. Now imagine being at a 26 field facility with a 1,200 square foot locker room where umpires are coming in and out all day, all day. These are people that they see at times more than their family. They're friends. They build culture together, and they really feel like they're a part of the facility, part of the program, part of the family. And that's what we try to do there. So that company is very much based in large facilities. So the smallest one is actually 6 fields and going all the way up to GP in Indiana, which is 26 fields. And then just the third, go ahead. Go
It's
ahead.
huge. Just
Yeah.
driving around there is exhausting. It's so big.
No doubt, no doubt. And with Kokomo just up the road, and then some of the high schools they use there, there's weekends in Westfield that we're on 42 fields. So quite a project for a great team there. And then just the third arm of what we do is the company I alluded to earlier, that I began when I was like 13 or 14, 15 years old, whatever it was. That company has kind of survived through the years, merged with a really good friend of mine, and created and continued to service some little leagues and some of the clients that I've been with for 25 years over in New Jersey. We kind of segment those 3 pieces: level, geography, a little bit of a different mission in each one, different kind of business that we're seeking, maybe a different official a little bit as well, but kind of all blended together under United Umpires. And I think I have been lucky enough to do every role in that company, probably in all three. And now it's my goals now are to support everyone else. We've got, depending on whether you're in the summer or the winter, probably somewhere between 13 and 15 employees, administrators that work with us, assign under us, act as site supervisors. And my goal is to take care of them. If I take care of them, they can take care of the people under them and take care of the people under them. And I always say, like, those guys do a great job steering the ship. My job is 3, 4, 5 times a year. I got to maybe just adjust the tracks a little bit for them and hopefully get to a spot where we get through a tough spot and we keep going. So it's not easy every day. In fact, some days are really, really hard. Some days you just want to go home and take a shower and go to bed.
For sure.
Other days you get up and you feel like you're on top of the world and you have the greatest job in the world. And that line, if you look at something on a weekly basis, it's probably, up and down, up and down, up and down. But, over time, I think we've had really nice progress, not only for ourselves, but in serving the officiating community. And, in a long-winded way, I'll get back to,
No, you're
I
good.
have
This is
only
awesome.
ever officiated baseball, really. So it's all I know. They keep trying to get us to tap into the softball world, and I think we do help a little bit there. But I've also always had the belief that I want to be an expert in what we do. I think there's been a lot of times where people have looked at our logistics side and said, hey, you guys are logistics. It doesn't matter whether you're scheduling janitors, baseball umpires, field hockey referees. And there's been times we've kind of delve into those. And then a coach would call me on the phone and say, we have a question about this rule. And
You're
I'm
like,
like, wow,
oh no,
I'm not even sure what the officials wear.
how many you have?
Exactly. And I think we've never taken a contract where they didn't know that going in, just in terms of sometimes they're like, hey, we just really need someone to organize these people. And that's a lot of what we do. So it just made sense. But baseball is kind of where we're at. It's kind of our heart and soul. And I think everybody who's involved on our team is coming from a spot of having some level of expertise. Either, they've umpired at a pretty high level, either in college or professional baseball, and they're at least able to answer questions about mechanics and rules in a way that's going to make people feel comfortable and make people feel like they have an answer that makes some sense.
That's amazing. Hearing just the evolution of United Umpires and the fact that you've been a part of it since you were a teenager. I mean,
Yeah.
what an amazing story. And I don't think I realized that, you and I met several years ago, and I don't
Yeah.
think I realized really the evolution of United Umpires. And you said a statement about you've probably had every single role within United Umpires, and that's great because the way you can speak to your staff as far as you've walked a mile in those shoes and you know what they're going through, it just helps you as a leader to be able to address their needs and know what will work, what won't. But that's very commendable, and just what a great story, and the fact that it's been your life. It's that's pretty amazing. So hearing about that, obviously you're super busy just with the United Umpire side of things. Based on that role as CEO of United Umpires, and then, of course, your role with Division III and with NJCAA, your work is certainly year-round. How difficult is it for you to balance the many hats that you wear in addition to your life outside of umpiring?
That's a great question. And probably has changed several times in all these years. When you own your own business or you're a part of a business where you're really invested in it, it becomes, there really are no days off. There's no Christmas and there's no Thanksgiving sometimes, but you kind of figure out that you're always working, but you always can do things you want to do. I hear people struggling with, hey, I got to figure out how to go to the doctor with my full-time job. I can't just leave and, or when I'm going to go to the gym or this or that. So you have the opportunity to do that. But at the same time, when the phone rings at 3 in the morning and somebody needs help because they're part of your staff, like that call's got to get answered too. So there's ups and downs to all of that. And from a year round standpoint with what we do, and I might jump ahead here to some other
That's
questions,
great.
but it's not just one thing. I mean, part of what we're doing is putting people onto baseball games. There's no doubt about that. That's the job of someone who has a coordination role and an assigning role. But there's so much more to that that causes it to be year round, which, you have the recruiting aspect of it, and you have the opening and cadet type classes for new officials. You're doing a ton of evaluation and clinics at different times during the year. And then at some point, you need the months where maybe we can't even be outside to collect yourself and figure out, where are we at with rosters? Where are we at with people advancing? Because there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that. We've really tried to keep track of our officials in a way that we can see them progress from the lowest levels of little league to Division 1 baseball. And that's one great thing about being in it this long. Like, we actually have those stories. Like, somebody that, like, 8-year old, like, working coach pitch behind the mound, and 11 years later they're on a Division 1 baseball field, and the only person they've ever worked for is us.
That's amazing.
That's such a cool story. And I had one of the conference coordinators in NCAA baseball text me the other day. He was watching one of our umpires and said, "Hey, so and so really looks like they could turn into a great umpire." And I was like, "Wow, that's a really special one for me," because that was one of those cases. And now you have a guy that went from that situation with us in New Jersey to being on a field somewhere, and the coordinator of a Power Four conference saying, "Hey, this is someone that maybe in the future, like, might be on one of the fields that I assign." And those stories are just so cool. Like, but when you look at it from a year round standpoint, it's year round on my part, but it's also year round on that official's part. Like, you don't make that jump, that growth, that kind of, on that kind of trajectory without 11 years of really, getting after it. Especially for an umpire that maybe doesn't go the professional route and doesn't have the repetitions of all those games of professional baseball. So they're getting repetitions, in their own life with their own, you know, mess and job and kids and everything they've got going on. So repetitions are harder to come by and fewer and further between. So 11 years of really grinding year in and year out. And I think for me, and I think for a lot of the guys that work with me and for me, trying to find that work-life balance is hard. When we talk about, having every job, I mean, there's days where, you're grinding till 3 in the morning trying to figure out who was going to umpire the baseball game at 8, and then you're up at 6:30 because someone's got to be at the field to open the locker room and get rolling. When you hear the stories about the CEO that started in the mailroom at Amazon or wherever it might be, that it's a really rewarding thing to have done all of that and then get to a spot where now you can have the credibility to say that you've done it when you talk to the people that you work with, but you also can give them the tools and speak to all the things that you screwed up for 20 years and try to help them not make the same mistakes, but also as a leader, understanding that, hey, I'm maybe who I am because of the mistakes that I've made. So that's always a balance. Like, hey, let them live, let them make the mistake, or help with the correction early in the process. And again, kind of circling back all the way to the year round aspect of this, like, that time when maybe we're not playing baseball, we're not training umpires, is the time where we have meetings and we're talking about what's everybody's problem at this facility. How do we fix it? How do we make it better for the officials? How do we make it better for the tournaments? And then obviously in college baseball, same kind of situation. We have a bit longer of an off season in college baseball than we do maybe in the travel game. So we're always talking, reviewing staffs, reviewing what we're doing administratively to help our people, help the umpires, help the game. And, in terms of my family life, sometimes I've probably been not as present as maybe I could have been or should have been. I'm very, very lucky to been with someone who's just very understanding. And I think, like anybody, you just find your match. And in terms of where you're at with independence and your job, and, she's a lawyer. So, if I wasn't working every hour, she's working every hour. So at the end of the day, like, we find a mesh. And I would say to everybody, like, you just have to find that, and you have to find the person that, if that's your choice to be with someone, like, who matches your intensity and your kind of hours in the day and things of that nature. So I've slowed down probably a little bit as I've let go. That's really hard. I don't think it's just officiating, but I think anybody who's built something, anybody who's been a
It's
founder.
hard.
I was listening to a podcast the other day about going from the founder, and at times the founder having to realize that at some point they need to hire a CEO who's not so connected to the business, because the decisions that we make as founder, when we're the guy who brought the coffee and brought the baseballs and brought the Gatorade to the umpires, as well as assign them, that you make different decisions than maybe somebody who has a different perspective. So as I've taken that step back and taken those steps back, it's probably improved all of our aspects. Like, I'm smart enough to realize that I don't have all the answers, I think. And a fresh perspective is always great. I think not only as someone reviews like what I've done through the years, but how we're handling new clients and existing clients and all those type of things. So, and the bonus is I get to be home.
That's definitely a bonus. So, as you're talking through this, obviously, in a sport like baseball, there is a commitment by umpires at every level, and it leans toward more of a commitment now than it might have back in the day. There's summer ball, fall ball, high school season, and beyond. So, from your experience, and you've got a lot of it, what advice would you give to newer umpires or any umpire about really staying fresh and staying engaged when the seasons kind of almost overlap?
Yeah, and I think there's a part of this that also involves other sports.
No, for sure.
As I was thinking about this, and as much as I think we talk to athletes these days about, hey, do play multiple sports. Don't focus as much on one sport. And if you become an athlete or you become an official, there's a part of you that's always an official. And I would say those multi-sport officials, even though we're specializing in baseball, they seem to be rejuvenated in a way. I mean, we obviously have the 350 to 400 game a year baseball umpires, and a lot of those are great umpires that have a great attitude and come to the ballpark every day, and it's great to see them. But I think at times we see the officials that they do basketball in the winter and they do football in the fall and they do baseball mostly in the spring and summer. And maybe they sprinkle in with fall ball, but they get a little bit rejuvenated in each sport. It's a round ball versus a football versus a little baseball. And instead of doing, 350 games in one of those sports, maybe they do 75, 75, 75. And so if you have an interest in officiating, and don't be afraid to kind of snoop around a little bit, figure out what you're interested in. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of athletes out there that played a lot of sports. So, I think we get linked sometimes to the sport that we are most passionate about in terms of what we pursue officiating. But obviously, with so many people, hey, you played basketball in the winter and you played baseball in the spring and maybe soccer in the fall, and maybe try each one. Maybe you hate one, maybe you love both, maybe you love them all. But don't be afraid that you have to be linked to one sport, because I'll tell a story. Like, I officiated soccer for exactly 2 months and I didn't know anything. I mean, I took like the high school class and probably learned what offsides was, but I knew how to officiate. Like, I knew how to control something. I knew how to talk to people. And from that aspect, like, across all sports, once you learn that, you'll be able to do some element, and probably the most important element of officiating in every sport, regardless of rules, regardless of whether the ball is round or square or triangle or however the field is shaped or whatever it might be. So don't be afraid to try those skills in different sports, because I think some of our best officials are multi-sport officials, because they do get that break. You can really, especially in baseball, no time on a lot of games, no time clock or anything like that. You can really get worn down, ground down, travel, things like that. So not so bad to recharge the batteries through a basketball game or a football game.
Sure, and that's such a good point. We talk all the time about kind of that transferability of skills. If you're an official, you can probably do okay in most sports other than maybe like ice hockey where you have to actually know how to
Yeah.
skate, but
Skate.
maybe you can't do that as well, but just being able to know what it's like to, if it's put air in a whistle or call a ball or a strike or whatever, having that game awareness and game control and knowing how to talk to a coach and all those things. So and a lot of times you see that where you have an official who's a football official, and then they decide, "Oh, I'm gonna try my hand at basketball." And you're like, "Man, he's already pretty good." And it's just because they've got that officiating experience. So I think the transferability of skills is really important, and it does open up kind of a world for you if you want. And some people are, "You know what? I'm gonna be a wrestling official, and that's all I'm gonna be." And that's okay too, but it's just, with sports where it is a long season, it's a lot of overlap with some of the for my world, for some of the non-high school stuff, that's great advice. So, you've got your role with United Umpires, and then you're NJCAA coordinator, you're a Division III coordinator. So, do you think that the roles differ for conference coordinators specifically in terms of the responsibilities between levels? And I know that you work with, you obviously do work with probably coordinators at other levels.
Yeah.
So do you see differences, or is it all kind of just the same stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Division 3 and junior college are vastly similar. As you kind of go up the ladder into Division 2 and Division 1, some of the coordination roles may change a bit with especially in baseball with the technology that's available,
Sure.
and the amount of money that's dedicated to that specific sport. So, you know, I think on the coordinator side, the biggest thing I would say is putting the bodies in the games and the names in the games. Like, that's the easiest part of the job. If you've done the rest of the work, and that's the part that's hard. It's getting out and supporting officials and evaluating them in person and on TV and on live streams. It's taking the data that maybe we do have from strike zone analytics and using that to evaluate. And then it's taking the time at the right time to talk to the officials about, how we can improve as a staff. And then the other side of it is taking the time to talk to your commissioners, your associate commissioners, your head commissioner, whoever it might be, depending on how big the conference is. Talk to your coaches, your associate ADs, and try to figure out, like, how do we make this better? How do we make it better? Where can we improve? Where are we doing really well? What can I bring back to the officials as a positive? What can I bring back as some pain points for you? Because I think for so long, and I don't know if it was in every sport, but especially in baseball, I think there was an idea of teams versus umpires. And I think a lot of people had that feel, maybe just because it was baseball, but also because you see these arguments on TV and you
Right.
see arguments between the umpire and the manager. So you get that in your mind, but that's not what where we're at today anymore. It's everybody working together, as 3 teams on the field to try to benefit the conference or the league or the tournament or whatever it might be, and just give everybody an opportunity to compete. And obviously going down the line, there's a lot of development out there in terms of high school baseball and getting people ready for college or getting recruited, and all the way down the travel line there, but it's not umpire versus team anymore.
That's good.
And so as a coordinator, like, I service both sides of the aisle from the standpoint of the officials and the teams and the conferences. And we're trying to put the best product out there, the most competitive product. Uh, as a coordinator, I think during the season, one of the biggest things that I've learned is being out there to support the officials means a lot to them. It means a lot to me too, but for them, it's not that I'm necessarily going to have 22 things for them to work on. No, I'm probably going to pick a few. Maybe there are more than a few, but we'll pick a few. We'll talk about them. We'll see how they handle them. But it's more about, like, hey, I'm out there. We're kind of in this together. No, it's not, I'm sitting in an office somewhere in Las Vegas or New Jersey or Indianapolis, just, playing Tetris with people's lives and where they go and how far they have to drive. We're in this together, going out at the same time that we're talking to officials, yeah, and talking to site coordinators, talking to associate ADs who might be managing the site that day, stopping in and talking to our coaches. Hey, how's it going? How are our officials doing this year? Um, you know, I think at times, again, going back to that coaches and teams versus umpires, we've run into, like, oh, the coaches are just going to say, like, we're terrible. Everybody hates umpires. Like, everybody, doesn't like officials. Look, I'll be the first one to tell you, because I talk to more coaches than anybody. Most coaches are very appreciative of what officials do. And I'm talking, coaches that are doing this as a profession, whether it be a high school coach or a college coach. The travel world can be a little different, but especially high school, college, and they're appreciative and they're willing to give constructive criticism of the program, but also very willing to compliment the officials and create situations where they're like, hey, can you bring this back to the guys or everyone on your staff that, hey, it's been a really great year and we really appreciate all of the work that you've done. Those are just a little bit of the tales on the road, but that's definitely the most rewarding part of what I do. Just getting to be out there. I don't get to officiate anymore. I haven't been on the field since 2019, I guess. So one of the biggest parts of that I miss is going away for the weekend and hanging out with the crew and working the games and all that kind of stuff. And probably the best part of that was, hanging out with the crew. And
For
I
sure.
still get to do that. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, sometimes I think there's some people out there who have always said kind of the games get in the way sometimes of the camaraderie. And there's definitely some truth to that.
For sure.
But it's great to still be out there and try to help people through what we can help them through and make the game better, whether that be coaches, again, coaches or officials or whomever it might be.
That just sounds so much like, you're in the relationship business. It's relationships with your umpires, it's relationships with the coaches, it's relationships with those athletic directors, and the fact that you take the time to go and ask those questions like, "Hey, is everything going okay?" That goes such a long way, and we talk a lot on this podcast about those relationships and the officiating family, and just without building those, not just with officials, but with the people that we serve outside of the officiating community, we're not doing our jobs. So I think it's so important to give them an ear when they need one and really open that line of communication so that they know that you're available and you're serving the game. It's not always just serving the officials. Obviously, it's in our job titles and that's
Sure.
what we're doing, but seeing that bigger picture of making sure that we're having the honest conversations with the people we serve on all ends is really important.
Yeah. And I mean, you build the relationship so that when the ship's going down, the relationship is built.
Yeah.
You got to build trust. You got to build camaraderie. You got to build a thought process that I'm acting in the best interest of the people involved collectively. I think you gain a lot of respect by at times saying, hey, I might have screwed this up, or we might have got this wrong, or we did get it wrong. And again, that's all part of relationship building. Because if you go into it as a coordinator of officials and every time something happens, the officials are 1000% right, you're gonna lose some people, and vice versa. There's coordinators out there that I know of who every time they're protecting their job and saying the coach and the AD are 1000% right, and they always come down on their officials, and you lose people like that too.
Absolutely.
It's the balance of, hey, what's credible, what's believable, what can I defend, and what can I use for education and make people feel like, hey, I'm going to take a stand when we think we did something right, but I'm also not afraid to say, hey, everybody screws things up.
Right.
Like ground balls go through shortstop's legs. Coaches send runners that shouldn't be sent. Umpires miss pitches, umpires miss plays. So we're all in an imperfect world, and we just kind of got to fess up to it when it comes around. And again, fall back on those relationships that maybe we've formed through the years to be able to have some credibility when you do say, hey, I screwed it up.
And it makes those difficult conversations a little less difficult when you have the rapport with somebody to be able to say, "You know what? Just gonna be honest with you, this is what happened, we messed it up," and because you already have that foundation, it makes those a lot easier when you have to if it's have a hard conversation with a coach or talk to officials about a potential effect on their schedule or whatever the case may be. If there's something that you have to do, the fact that you've already got such a solid foundation really does help to soften the blow as much as it can when it's a hard talk. So, with the college coordinator issue, we've had conference coordinators in a lot of different sports on the podcast, and that job, I feel like over time has really expanded quite a bit. Do you feel like the responsibilities of a college coordinator have gotten to be more year round, or do you see still a predefined season where you have a little bit of preseason, a little bit of postseason in the season, but then you're kind of off? Like, how is that looking these
Yeah.
days?
Yeah, I think it all depends on what you're doing as a coordinator. And I don't necessarily mean like the actual tasks. I think a lot of our tasks are the same, but your size.
Sure.
So we're somewhere with all the coordinators under our umbrella, somewhere probably in the 175 school range. And that's just college baseball.
Okay.
So at that level, we are having to evaluate and train and go to clinics in 3 different umpire systems. Never mind just, you know, the number of sheer umpires that are involved, but some of those games I worked in the 2 umpire system. A majority I worked in the 3 umpire system, and then, our postseason level umpires are working in the 4 umpire system. So you have to look at a training regiment that incorporates all 3 of those, and what is the best way to do that? What's the best way to target those officials and prepare them, and elevate them maybe within our conferences or maybe within, conferences that are a bit higher. So if you're a conference coordinator, say of 1, 2 umpire conference, your role might just be a little bit different. It doesn't mean you're not doing all the same things, but they're not magnified in that same way. So I mean, to run something like we're running, that's why, like I said, we have like 13 or to 15 people that are involved on the admin side, and 4 of those people are full-time like employees, like workers. They're not going to the day job and then assigning baseball umpires at night. This is what they do
Right.
365 days a year. That's the type of commitment that running an organization of this size kind of takes. But the advantages are, we get into this spot where if you live in a certain spot, you can progress in such a way that is very easy through the training. You get acclimated, you get familiarized with the people and the sites, and you can just continue to progress. So that obviously doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a lot of work on our end, but it then creates kind of an ease of, hey, I'm not just a solo conference coordinator in some state and I have schools in 4 states and I got to figure out how we're going to source this and then train that and get evaluations and get people that are going to observe. So we've kind of put it together in I guess degrees of scale. Now that again probably increases the work, but it also from that perspective, makes the work a little bit more coordinated in a way that we know what the process is going to be year after year. We know what we have to accomplish, and we just kind of tackle it as we can.
So this is a little off topic of year round, but something that I'm always fascinated by. So baseball is one of the sports where we see umpires get started at a younger age. You had mentioned somebody being, 8 years old doing some coach pitch games. So what's the best advice that you can give to those young umpires? And kind of secondarily, how can their families best support their umpiring endeavors? So those parents that have got an 11-year-old who's starting to umpire.
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying this for those who are listening that may not know this. Baseball, I believe, is the only sport where we do it a little bit backwards. So you attend a professional umpire school. And this has changed a little bit in the last couple of years, but essentially you attend a professional umpire school, pursue a professional career, and then I'll say fall out to college baseball, to high school baseball, to other things. Whereas, your other major sports, you work your way up. So
I
you
never
may,
thought about that until you just said that. That is,
yeah.
never
So,
thought about that.
the NFL is hiring out of college football. The NHL is probably hiring out of juniors or whatever that might be. And, basketball kind of in the same way. Whereas in baseball, we're taking umpires into the 1-day clinics now and then into the 5 weeks at Vero. And then they go right out into the professional game. That doesn't mean you couldn't have worked a year or 2 of, college level baseball and then go do that. But it's not years and years of experience, and they want you to be, when you're at the top of the SEC, now you might become an NFL referee. Like that's not how it's going to be in baseball. So that being said, I think you can get into probably baseball umpiring as young as, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever it might be. And I think from a family standpoint, I think it's important to find your young official in a situation that is positive, and really testing out that kind of environment. Unfortunately, in probably all sports, but certainly in baseball, we have coordinators and assigners out there who will throw people out there because they need bodies. And they might not know what someone looks like, how old they are. They see a name, they pop it into an assigning system. And, now all of a sudden you have, a 14-year-old young man who's out with 16-year-olds at a field, and who knows what's going to happen. So as a family member, as parents, as maybe the older brother, the older sister, I'd love to see taking the care to understand, hey, where's my young official going? Are they in like our local league where the president has kind of read the coaches the riot act that, hey, we're trying to do something for the community here. We're trying to educate these young adults in the responsibilities of having a job. They're trying to learn the rules. They're trying to learn how to do this. We have an officiating shortage. Like, don't act like idiots. Are we in that kind of an environment? Are we in an environment like Grand Park where, hey, we have 26 fields there. We have 4 fields in the back that are our youngest athletes, where we put our youngest umpires. And literally, if something happened within 8 seconds, there would be 6 people there. So we're not sending these young officials off to, again, an isolated high school or an isolated field or an isolated place where you hear about some of these incidents. Make sure that your young officials in a positive spot and they're not just being sent to games here and games there. If you're the person who's responsible for their transportation, show an investment in it. Like, my mom used to watch some of my games. My dad, the same thing. Like, they would kind of watch and stay off to the side, and then maybe we'd talk about some things that happened. Not that they knew about mechanics or anything like that, but they showed an interest in what I was doing or what I was, enjoying. So there's that aspect of it. And just continue to encourage and let the official find their way. I think you'll start to know as we start to, especially in baseball, as you get into that 16, 17, 18 year range, that umpire, if they're so inclined, will start to hear about the 1-day camps. We'll start to hear about professional umpire school, things like that. And maybe that's the choice that they make. Maybe they, go to college and get a regular job and work high school baseball or college baseball or whatever it might be. But the other thing that I would say just about pursuing kind of the professional path is, don't get into a spot where you don't feel like you want to be a professional umpire. Like, understand what the life is, understand what kind of the travel might be like, understand the journey. And at that point, like, see if that's something you want to do. And maybe you say, hey, I want to try that out and, go for a few years, see how I like it. But with everything in officiating, try to ask the questions in a way that you get solid answers and make good decisions. On the other hand, don't be that person that's just really a nudge to everybody. And I think, Dana, you've probably experienced those type of officials in your travels. So
Maybe once or twice.
you got to find a way to get the information that you need. And I think that's a big thing. All the time I'm approached by umpires at different ages and different levels that it's very clear they have done zero research on how you start working college baseball or how you start working high school baseball or what you might need to do to get into those circles. And then they come at you like very hard, like right away, the big email, like things like that. So try to do some research, try to figure out where you fit. We're always, as officials, think that we're more qualified than we are. That's what we live with on a daily basis. Everybody thinks they should be on TV, which, that's fine, but understand that there's people in roles that are invested in our sports and invested in officials and can help you along the way, but come at them with a little bit of grace, a little bit of education on your side, and understand that those people are trying to help. If you get, some negative feedback, try to take it in a way that says, hey, well, I think this guy might be giving me negative feedback because he actually cares. Like,
That's right.
I would generally find that when I'm not interested in helping somebody, I'm not going to slam them. I'm not even going to waste time giving them any feedback. I'll be in my car and I'm long gone. If I'm going to sit and invest in you and in what you're doing, I'm taking some time. I think with anything, like anybody who's taking that time, evaluate what they're saying, but at least give them the grace and the thanks of you took some time out of whatever your precious seconds are and shared with me something that you felt. And maybe you flush it on your ride home, but at least, have the grace to say thank you and kind of move along.
And that's great advice. All of that was great advice, but I love what you said about if somebody is taking the time to give you feedback, even if it's not positive, they're just trying to get you better. And I think, just as humans, we don't wanna hear how we mess something up, but if somebody has stayed through your entire game and they stay after to talk to you, it's because they want you to be successful. And as if you're a young umpire or even if you're a veteran umpire and you're hearing this, I think it's important to understand that when people are making that investment and giving of their time, we do owe it to them to at least hear them out and try to maybe the whole message doesn't resonate, take the 1 or 2 things that does and go, "You know what? I could try that in my next game." And nobody's trying to
Yeah.
hurt feelings. It's just part of the process of growing as an official. So, love that advice. So, Alex, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in training and educating baseball umpires? On the other side of that, what are some of the biggest rewards?
I'll start with the second part because I think
I
it's,
like start positive.
yeah, um, again, I talked about following paths and seeing people progress, getting to whatever I say all the time. I want to help you get to whatever your next level is. If you want to be a Little League World Series umpire, if you want to be a high school state tournament umpire, if you want to be a Division 1 college umpire, like we're going to try to help you. And honestly, if you come to us with goals, it actually makes life a little bit easier
It does.
because we can kind of make a plan for you that maybe we put you with a certain person as opposed to this person who's got a different track and a different mindset. But watching those successes, getting those phone calls, hey, I got my first Division 1 weekend. Hey, I got my first Division 1 regional. Hey, I got my first high school playoff game. Whatever it might be, just being able to follow those again in terms of seeing the success and then also seeing being a part of it, which is being able to attend that game, attend that championship, and support the officials. So that's all really rewarding stuff. I mean, you talked a little bit about my role at the Division 3 World Series. I worked the series in 2015. It was the national coordinator Don Umlin's first year, actually, after he's followed George Drosses, who moved up to the Division 1 job. And Don and I developed a friendship. We had worked a little bit before, and we just have a close relationship in terms of that championship. And every year, we see 8 new umpires because in Division 3 we generally take a new grouping, and we see them come in and they're very excited about their journey. They're excited about their accomplishment. But then not only do you see them succeeding individually, but how those 8 people from 8 spots all over the country mesh together and how they kind of blend together with the emotion of the players on the field and how people are reacting to things. I mean, there's nothing like working a national championship because you don't realize it doesn't matter what level you're working, like there's a lot of people that's their last set of baseball games as players and they're competing for a championship and they've some especially at the Division 3 level, like they may never play baseball again competitively. I mean, maybe a men's league here or there, but it's it's a culmination of what they've been doing since they were 6 years old. And so to see the umpires start to understand that as they proceed through that national championship. And I don't think it's a feeling that you can obviously conceptualize it. Like you and I could sit here and say, this happens, but until you actually feel it and you're on the field during it, and now you're the coordinator who maybe was able to help promote them and has seen that official and now sees that official have that experience, there's a part of that there's no amount of money in the world or no feeling that can actually describe what that's like. And it's in a world where maybe we sometimes have some losses, that's a huge win.
Agreed.
And so those kind of things, and you get the phone call of, hey, I've been to 4 or 5 of your clinics and finally got this opportunity. And so it's those kind of wins and a little bit of off the field stuff. And we've talked a lot about college baseball here, but at what we're doing at these complexes and at these facilities, we have wins and losses every single day that have nothing to do with baseball. We have kids graduating college and kids getting a job and marriages and babies being born. And on the other side, unfortunately, we have death and car accidents and cancer and those kind of things. And, you know, all of that is part of the culture of where we are. And we
Absolutely.
touch, our staff touches 3,000 officials, probably 3,000 baseball umpires nationwide, over a 365-day period. And one of my guys said to me the other day, like, man, it just seems like every day it's something. And it's the great reward is being able to feel those positive experiences, but it's also the great curse of the more people the more bad things are going to touch you too.
True. Very
And the more
true.
people you interact with and how that happens. So that's the tough part. And I think again, when I reference like at these complexes, we have some people really out there grinding and they're spending more time at the complex than they are with their wife and their kids and everybody else. So that's their family in that room sometimes. And when the call comes and something good or something bad happens, you know, sometimes my staff is the first one they see, or you know their partner on the field is the first one they see, and it becomes the lifeline and the support system. So again, that's the great reward and the great consequence there, I think. And then on the college side, um you have to disappoint people, and that's hard as a coordinator. And I guess the hardest one is the official that is really giving everything they have, and they just don't have the talent, the ability to work at the next level. And you have to unfortunately tell a high school umpire that you're going to be a really good high school umpire for a while, but the ceiling's not there. The next level, it's just not there for you. Again, for the official that doesn't really care, which we have some for sure, that just thinks it's my birthright to go to the next level. It's not as hard. But for that official that's invested, really, really invested, wants it really bad, is willing to put in the work, is willing to do everything that we ask. And then at the end of the day, we're in a performance-based business. You've got to be able to do it. The days of the promotion because of longevity or service or things like that, there's too many cameras, too many track bands.
Right.
um you know we can't send someone to the College World Series anymore who can't call balls and strikes. Like, you just can't do it. The box is up there. It's
For the
so
whole world to see.
for the whole world to see, for sure. And that's a one very extreme example. But within what I do, obviously, that we know that junior college and Division III and all of our athletics, that's our biggest sports base. I mean, those are the biggest groupings. So it's obviously the point where we have the most umpires, and that progression from high school baseball to some level of collegiate baseball, junior college, and IAD is really important to people. And again, that's because there's so many officials needed and then so many progressing. You're working with so many people at so many different entry points, and a lot of them we get to have really fun stories with and get them into the college baseball. But again, on that negative side, unfortunately, you got to say, hey, this just it's not it for you right now, and maybe ever. Sometimes there's, unfortunately, maybe ever stories. And that's hard too, again, because it's the person that is invested that you have to say no to. That's always the hardest. Always, always the hardest.
Those are difficult. We even see it sometimes at the high school level where you have
For sure.
somebody who they have the heart and they want so desperately to be a state tournament official or whatever, and they just don't have the skill set. And I hated doing that. And it's just a conversation you have to have sometimes about this is where you are, and you just try to be as encouraging as possible. But man, those are not my favorite conversations to have. But
No.
it's part of the industry. It's part of what we have to do. It's a reality. But I like the other calls much better of, "Hey,
Yeah.
I got hired into Division I," or whatever. I'm like, "Oh, those are fun ones." So there's a balance there
Yeah.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So, Alex, we have a final question for you, and it's one that we ask to all of our guests. So,
Yeah.
the From A to Zebra podcast has a mission each week to elevate, educate, and excite our listeners. What can you tell our audience about officiating that accomplishes that mission?
I would say to the general person out there that nobody works harder as a whole and nobody takes things harder than officials. And when you watch the baseball playoffs today and you think we missed that call or we missed this, and whether it be a high school game, whatever it might be, like I have seen officials that they go home and they wear that for 24 hours until the next time they get to go out there. So just just remember, it's not a situation where officials just like go out there and then, magically disappear and forget everything that happens. Like they really care. The good ones are really, really invested. For many, it's a full-time job on top of their full-time job. So from that perspective, and the other piece of it is just remember that all these people have families. Like if you want to yell at the the uniform, cool. Like I'm good with it. But just remember that the person in that uniform goes home to their wife and kids. And when you think that it's funny to, you know, Google their name and send emails around and, mention officials by name and they're horrible and they cost you this and cost you that. Like, I don't know. I think we've just lost it a little bit there. And you've certainly lost me,
Absolutely.
so again, if my comment is more on the educate side,
That's a great,
it's
great comment.
let's have a little bit of common sense when we look at, how hard people work, what they're doing, how much they've given up to be in a spot. I mean, especially like think about our biggest criticisms come in probably the biggest spots. Like as a fan, like we're criticizing officials in Super Bowls and NFC championships and the World Series. And think about all of that those people have invested in their lives to try to be good in the service of whatever game and whatever athletes they're helping along the way. And again, they go home to kids and grandmas and dads and wives and things like that. Think about the next time because my page at United Umpires, when we're in College World Series this time of the year, people that are uneducated with how things work, we're lucky enough to be one of the top searches if you search umpire and they hit up my contact us page with this umpire you put on the field is blah 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 blah. And like literally I have nothing to do with it, obviously, but I'm reading this and I'm like, how do you have to be going about this to get to this point where you've done this, searched this out, written this horrible thing and thought that that was okay? And think about again what that person has put into this and understand that we're all human. Like we all make mistakes. We're all going to handle situations badly. We're all going to, handle every part of our job badly at some point. I promise you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we're going to handle it well and still be criticized for handling it badly. Um, all the different points in between. So I guess my point on education is just have some feel, have a little common sense. Try to respect and understand that, man, those nights when you leave the ballpark and you screwed it up or that you messed up a rule or that play at first base, like, or you don't know, there was no camera or you haven't seen the camera yet, and what that's like from the time you leave the field to the time you get to the locker room and you're actually going to get to look at it. You're like, shoot, I hope I got that right. And there was an argument on the field, and then for 4 innings you're thinking about it and all those kind of things. So just understand that these are people that really care. And that's not just baseball. My experience overwhelmingly is that officials really care about what's going on out there. They want to get it right. They want to be respected for their abilities in handling people and handling situations and getting calls right. So try to respect that. And, I think that's probably a good message for anything in life. So
I think that's a great message and definitely well heard. And we do have people that listen to this podcast who are not officials, and that's a great message for them and great message to tell your friends as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And Alex Scandalis, thank you so much for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. With you being year-round and everything you do, it means a lot that you took the time to be with us and share your message and your journey and everything that you've done, but also the great work that United Umpires has been doing for years. Great. Glad we were able to reconnect after all these years as well. And just thank you so much for your efforts and for your time. It's greatly appreciated. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X for more information about the show. See you next time.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.